Smoke. I'm David Smoke. Mack Rhoades joins us on 365 Sports. So what were you thinking as you watched TCU and Georgia, and obviously men among boys with what Georgia did?
Yeah, probably a lot of different things. One, Georgia's pretty darn good. I mean, physically, I just felt like they dominated, both sides of the ball. But I've been part of that situation where, you're on that end, that same end that TCU was on. And so it's not a lot of fun and really felt for them. I'm a big fan. I think I've mentioned this before of Coach Dykes, and our relationship goes back, probably at least a decade, that I've known him, and I've got great respect for him and their athletic director, Jeremiah Donati, and, know a lot of the people within the athletic department, and great people. So felt for them. Just a tough night. And, I think it, certainly wasn't any one thing, I think, the physicality piece, but, sometimes it's just not your night. And, it certainly was Georgia's, and it's probably, the best game Georgia's played, all year long and maybe in the last 2 years. So, tough night and, for TCU in the Big 12, but, I think a great step forward and, in terms of, breaking through, the CFP, getting through the semifinals and getting the team into the championship.
Mack, you guys, when I've brought this up, you've almost not been taken aback by it, but there is always this, like, what's Baylor doing with NIL? And you've tried to do this methodically, and you've tried to do it a certain way. And then yesterday, the announcement that you're actually, as an athletics department, mentioning, announcing, and discussing NIL Advisory Council. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, I think a couple things. I think, one, there wasn't a whole lot that we could really talk about and say until, recent changes, obviously, within the NCAA. And so, we were able to now be, more outspoken, promote, support. And those changes just happened, recently. I think the other thing for us, is we're in a little bit of a unique position, meaning that, we're trying to raise money, not just for name, image, and likeness, but, right now the primary has been, both the pavilion and the football development center. And, we're at this space and time where, people are having to donate, and it impacts, where they're going to sit in the where their seats are going to be located, where they're going to sit in the pavilion. And so a lot of, competing interests. And, we really felt like that, certainly 12 months ago, 6 months ago, we needed to make, those two capital projects a priority. And, the reality is, I've had some donors ask me personally, Mack, well, do you want me giving the money to the two facilities, or do you want me giving it to name, image, and likeness? And so that's been, something, a dynamic that maybe not everybody in the country is dealing with. And then again, doing it our way, making sure that, our collective, so to speak, GXG, that it's in line with our Christian values and the way we do things. I've talked about we're not going to do it like everybody else. And, I think, through Startup Waco and starting this athletics arm, GXG, this relationship, this partnership with the community, with the Waco community, I think is really, really special. And I think it's a great way to go for everybody involved. So those are a lot of the different reasons. We've always, I think, underneath the water, have been churning and have been working on name, image, and likeness from the very beginning. when it first, came into effect on July 1, 2021. In fact, I think we were one of the leaders in the country in terms of all of the infrastructure, education, disclosure, all of those things, making sure that we were prepared so that our student athletes could be successful in the space.
Mack, any update on either of those facilities that you mentioned, either the basketball arena or the football ops building? I know that there's been, as far as the basketball goes, some updates from time to time put out on social media, but anything of note or anything's changed in regard to those projects?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking, Craig. Everything, I think no news is good news. I think everything is on schedule, ready to go. One of the architects sent me a text over the weekend saying the first truss is going up. And so that's big news when we think about the pavilion, but still on schedule. Still scheduled to play, in January 1 of 2024. So in 11 and a half months, think about that we'll be playing in that new facility. And then right now, construction ongoing with the development center and the indoor practice. They'll be connected to one another. And, right now our CM is working on the front side, the entry side of the indoor, which would be the south side, and beginning to tear that down so that, again, part of that overall project is extending the indoor by 20 yards so that it moves from an 80-yard field to a 100-yard field. So both are proceeding very well, and we continue to be excited about both those projects.
I have to admit, when it comes to the pavilion, that when you announced the date that it would open, that seems so far away, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, that's 1 year away. I can only imagine how you all must be feeling to know, that's actually right around the corner. It's 2023 now.
Yeah, no, I look at pictures and then I look at the calendar. I look at pictures and I look at the calendar, right? I try to measure in my own way, just kind of progress, and okay, we're moving at this clip, then yeah, it looks good. I think we can have this thing done by January 4. But we're excited, and I think about some of the crowds, like the Kansas State crowd, in the Farrell Center, and you think about putting that crowd in the pavilion. My goodness, that place is loud. It's sold out. It's really, really difficult to play in, and so I think we're all excited about that move into the pavilion.
Yeah, I was there Saturday night, and it was lit, and it was an incredible atmosphere with Jerome Tang's return, emotional, and then, of course, an incredible basketball game that ended with the K-State win in overtime. How emotional was that for you, watching? This is your program. This is your team. It's under your umbrella, and you see Baylor's won some of those, and then, of course, with the emotions of Jerome Tang. How was that a roller coaster for you?
I try not to get on that roller coaster. Now that's easier said than done. But I was intentional about not saying anything to Jerome prior to the game, and wanted to just handle that and deal with that, afterwards. And I was we had a moment or two to be able to hug one another and to be able to just talk a little bit, and for me to tell I'm proud of him, love him, and all of those things. And, Jerome and I had a great relationship when he was here, and, I'm happy for him. And, at the same time, that was a really tough night. And, it's been a tough start, obviously, to the Big 12 season, starting off 0-3, but, I think, this is where, you work harder, you work smarter. This is when you double down, and, as Scott and I were talking, there's still so much of the season left to play. And, I wouldn't want to be in the foxhole with anybody else other than Scott Drew. This is a really talented team. And there's no doubt in my mind it will find its way under his leadership, and toward the end we'll be right in the middle of it. So just makes the journey maybe a little bit more more difficult, a little bit more challenging, but I believe that we're up for the challenge.
Mack, the story last week about Damar Hamlin and, of course, released from the hospital on Monday. The Bills made that announcement. But you and I and Craig and Paul had this discussion about where you are, and you mentioned Kenny Boyd as elite as anyone can be in that specific position in an athletic department or anywhere, even if he was a part of a professional franchise. We had Dr. Neelish Goswami on. Dr. Goswami mentioned to me a couple of different times that he and Baylor Scott and White Hillcrest are working with Baylor to even more fine-tune testing. And you've had at Baylor, you weren't there, Isaiah Austin, you know King McClure. There have been cases where players have still been able to play at Baylor and have success. Is that something you guys are always tweaking?
Yeah, Jared Butler, I don't know if you mentioned initially.
I didn't,
yeah. But it is, one, we're grateful for the partnership we have with Baylor Scott and White, and certainly Dr. Goswami. But, I think, and I don't want to, misrepresent, but I do think we're in this constant, always trying to improve, looking at our process. Now it's not every day, but it's, certain moments and times throughout the year. And I think, we've continued to do that with consistency, constantly. And so, yes, with Dr. Goswami right now, looking at some of the ways we screen, and, are there, more things we can do, different ways we can handle, heart screening, et cetera. So, and we'll continue to evolve. We're always going to have to continue to evolve in this area, if we want to do right by our people. We certainly care about and love our staff and our student athletes. And, we've got a duty to provide the responsibility to provide the best care that we can possibly do that, and that we possibly can. And we can't do it alone. It takes a lot of people within the Waco community, and it takes people that care, like Dr. Goswami, our other doctors. It takes a lot of people, and so we're blessed that we've got some really, really good people involved.
I want to go back to TCU and Georgia. There was discussion. Kirk Herbstreit mentioned this at the end of the broadcast when it got to be just completely one-sided, which it almost basically did in the second quarter. Does that in any way, all the publicity of TCU being a part of the Big 12, is there still any, or do you have any concern that there are the haves and the have-nots because of how last night went?
Yeah, that I heard a little bit of that commentary, and I think that's what we're right in the middle of when you think about college athletics. Smoke, to be really honest with you, we're in this time and place where because of deregulation with some of the rules, certainly. Name, image, and likeness, TV contracts, right? Are we setting this up right where those with the most money are gonna be the ones that are competing for championships every year? And I think we're in that dilemma right now, trying to figure that out. And certainly at Baylor, we don't play in 100,000, 110,000 seat stadium. And, when you think about our alumni base and, our enrollment over the years, we don't have the largest alumni base, in the country as compared to many of the other schools we compete in. And so we've got to be really smart. We've got to probably do, more with what we have. We've got to stick to our process and keep aligned with our Christian values, never compromise. And, there are days where, I sit and I go, wow, that's a pretty tall task in a big mountain to climb, but we're climbing it, and we keep ascending, and I think Baylor, and I can speak for only Baylor, we're going to find a way to continue to be nationally relevant amongst all of this, I call chaos. And, the name, image, and likeness piece is important. What's interesting, it may be completely different in 2 years, right? We could get to a point and place in time where now all of a sudden name, image, and likeness is within the athletic departments, and it's part of our fundraising arm. It's part of the Bear Foundation. But we're going to continue to evolve and find ways. And I'm thankful again for Startup Waco, for John Passavant and his team. And it's a great group of people. It's a diverse group. It's a group of folks that really connect well with our student athletes. And then the advisory council, those are 6 individuals that have been with us organically, that have been very interested in name, image, and likeness, and have, quite frankly, skin in the game. They not only trying to help put this together, but they're also contributing to it as well. So when you look at GXG and their staff, and our advisory council, which I think is, now that we're, I'm going to say, quote unquote official, that will continue to potentially grow. I think we've got a great program and a great plan in place, and we're going to do it the right way. We're gonna make sure that we're not using it to induce student athletes to come here, and we're going to make sure that we've got it in place where our student athletes absolutely understand how to grow their name, image, and likeness, how important it is, and find ways for them to connect with people in our community.
So, in other words, this advisory council, can they take donor money and place it into athletes' NIL? I just want to make sure what's changed other than the fact you now can promote it.
Yeah, it really hasn't changed, right? GXG is they're really the boots on the ground, the day-to-day team that engages directly with our student athletes. Okay, and they are the group that's responsible for executing, name, image, and likeness partnerships between the student athletes and our local businesses. The advisory council works with them in terms of raising money. And so, if you're interested in donating toward name, image, and likeness to help our student athletes, you're not doing that through necessarily the advisory council. You're obviously not doing that through Baylor Athletics or to Baylor Athletics. You're doing that, to GXG directly, and because GXG is a 501c3, right? It's tax deductible. And, the advisory council, those members have donated to GXG, and they're also out there asking, other Baylor supporters to donate to GXG. So I hope that makes sense.
It does. And one final thing on Dre Edwards, who had her emotional plea last week, and then, of course, the Kentucky coach responded. Have you picked up the phone or have any conversation with Kentucky's athletic department? How does that work if you get to a point where it's a stalemate?
Yeah, I know Mitch really well at Kentucky, and I've got great respect for him. And, Mitch and I talked about this probably a couple different times, weeks ago, prior to any of this becoming public. I shared my thoughts. He shared his thoughts. Ultimately, he's he's supporting the decision of his head coach, just like I would support Nikki's decision. So, but we've had conversation, and I think for Dre, for our basketball program, and for us, right? Dre's got to continue to do all the things that she's doing right now. Again, knocking it out of the park academically. She's been a great teammate. She's at practice. She's at times, part of the scout team, continuing to grow and flourish in all different ways, beyond just basketball, continue to improve her basketball skills. And, if she doesn't have an opportunity to play this year, let's make sure that she's ready in all of those ways, both on and off the court for next year.
Thank you, Mack. Appreciate your time. Mack Rhoades, Baylor's Director of Athletics, and TJ.